Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode from AskDrift. The Titanic, a name synonymous with tragedy and grandeur. It lies 2.5 miles deep in the dark, icy waters of the Atlantic. And for over a century, a question has haunted us: why haven't we brought it back to the surface? You might think with all our modern technology, lifting a ship should be simple. We have cranes that can lift thousands of tons, submarines that can explore the deepest trenches. So why is the Titanic still down there? The answer is far more complex and fascinating than you might imagine. It's a story of physics, finance, and philosophy. Today, we're diving deep to uncover the real reasons why the Titanic remains a permanent resident of the abyss. First, let's talk about where the Titanic is. It's not just sitting on a smooth, sandy ocean floor. It's located in a remote part of the North Atlantic, about 370 miles off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada. The depth is staggering. It rests at 12,500 feet. That's nearly 2.5 miles down. To put that into perspective, if you stood the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa, on the ocean floor next to the Titanic, its tip wouldn't even reach the halfway mark to the surface. At this depth, the pressure is immense. It's about 6,000 pounds per square inch. That's like having several dozen jumbo jets stacked on top of you. It's an environment that is incredibly hostile to both humans and machines. Now, let's consider the state of the wreck itself. The Titanic is not a single, intact ship waiting to be lifted. When it sank, it broke into two main pieces. The bow section and the stern section are separated by about 1/3 of a mile of debris. The stern section in particular imploded as it sank, twisting and mangling the steel. It's a chaotic mess. The bow, while more recognizable, is also in a fragile state, buried deep in the mud. For over a century, the ocean has been working on the wreck. A process called saltwater corrosion has relentlessly eaten away at the steel hull. But it's not just the water, there's a biological factor at play too. Scientists have discovered unique species of bacteria, named Halomonas titanicae, that are literally eating the ship. These microorganisms consume the iron and create icicle-like formations of rust called rusticles. These rusticles are not solid rust. They are delicate, porous structures, and when you touch them, they can dissolve into a fine powder. The ship is essentially being consumed from the inside out. Experts estimate that the ship's structure is rapidly deteriorating. Some predict that in a few decades, the main structure could collapse entirely, leaving just a pile of rust on the ocean floor. The ship is incredibly fragile, so just trying to lift it poses a massive risk. Imagine trying to pick up a century-old sculpture made of wet paper. Any attempt to attach cables or use a lifting frame would likely cause the hull to disintegrate. But let's say, for a moment, that we could solve the fragility problem. How would we even begin to lift something so massive? The Titanic originally weighed over 46,000 tons. Even accounting for the parts that have disintegrated, you're still looking at an object of monumental weight. No single crane in the world can lift that from such a depth. We would need a completely new, revolutionary method. One idea that has been floated is to fill the hull with massive inflatable bags or pontoons. The concept is simple: pump air into these bags, and their buoyancy would slowly lift the wreck to the surface. This was famously proposed by a British engineering firm in the 1970s. They suggested filling the ship with 180,000 tons of molten wax or Vaseline, which would then harden and float. Sounds wild, right? The problem is the execution. How do you get hundreds of thousands of tons of material 2.5 miles down and accurately inject it into a decaying, broken wreck? The logistics are a nightmare. Another popular idea involves using giant claws or a cradle. You'd build a massive steel structure on the surface, sink it down, slide it under the two main sections of the wreck, and then lift the whole thing up. This would prevent stress on the hull itself, but again, the scale is mind-boggling. You'd be building one of the largest underwater structures ever conceived, just for the recovery effort. The precision required to position it at that depth would be unprecedented. And this brings us to the biggest, most practical obstacle of all: the cost. Every single one of these proposals comes with a price tag in the hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars. Who would pay for this? Governments, private investors, museums. It's an astronomical sum of money for an object that is, essentially, a piece of history. The financial return on such an investment is almost non-existent. Think about it. Raising the Titanic would be a project on the scale of building a new skyscraper or an aircraft carrier, but with far greater technical challenges. And for what? A decaying ship that would need billions more to preserve once it's on the surface. And that's a point many people forget. Getting it out of the water is only half the battle. Once exposed to air, the rapid decay would accelerate. The salt-infused metal would start to crumble almost immediately. You would need to build a specialized, climate-controlled facility, perhaps one of the largest in the world, just to house and preserve it. The ongoing costs for conservation would be enormous, likely for decades to come. By the way, if you're finding this deep dive into the Titanic's secrets fascinating, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our next adventure. Now, beyond the technical and financial hurdles, there's a powerful ethical argument against raising the Titanic. And this is where the conversation gets really deep. The Titanic is a gravesite. Over 1,500 people lost their lives when the ship went down. Their bodies were never recovered. The site is their final resting place. For many descendants of the victims, the idea of disturbing the wreck is deeply disrespectful. It's seen as desecrating a memorial. They believe the ship and its passengers should be left to rest in peace. This sentiment is shared by many of the explorers who have visited the wreck, including its discoverer, Dr. Robert Ballard. He has always been a strong advocate for leaving the ship untouched, treating it with the reverence of a memorial. In fact, the site is now protected. An international agreement between the United States and the United Kingdom designates the wreck as a memorial. This treaty aims to prevent looting and unregulated salvage operations. It encourages treating the site with the respect it deserves, allowing for exploration and artifact recovery only under strict scientific and archaeological guidelines. It's not a treasure chest to be plundered. Over the years, about 5,500 artifacts have been legally recovered from the debris field surrounding the wreck. These items, from a piece of the grand staircase to personal belongings, have been carefully preserved. These artifacts give us a tangible connection to the people on board. They tell powerful stories without disturbing the main hull sections, which are considered the core of the gravesite. Raising the entire ship would be a fundamentally different act. It would prioritize our curiosity and desire for a spectacle over the sanctity of the site. It raises the question, do we have the right to do that? So, let's summarize. We have a ship that is incredibly fragile, being actively eaten by bacteria, and sitting under crushing pressure 2.5 miles deep. Any plan to lift it would require technology that we don't currently have at a cost that is almost impossibly high. And even if we could, we would face the challenge of preserving it on the surface. And overlaying all of that is the profound ethical question of whether we should disturb a recognized maritime memorial and gravesite for over 1,500 souls. When you put all of these pieces together, the picture becomes clear. The reason we haven't recovered the Titanic isn't because we lack imagination. It's because the challenges physical, financial, and ethical are simply monumental. Perhaps the Titanic's true purpose now is not to be a museum piece on land, but to remain in the deep, a silent and solemn reminder of the fragility of life and the power of the ocean. Its story continues to captivate us, not because of what it was, but because of where it is and what it represents now. A ghost ship, a deep-sea memorial, forever locked in the dark, cold embrace of the Atlantic. So I lines leave you with this thought. Does bringing the Titanic to the surface truly honor its legacy, or does its power lie in its very untouchability? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.